Well, hello, welcome to the Waters and Stanton video channel again. Nice you to check in. My name's Peter Waters and this is the 29th of March. It should be the start of spring, or at least we should be heading towards the start of spring, but as I look out the window it's anything but spring at the moment. And it's certainly not very encouraging to go out. I'm located in the southeast of England, where we normally get reasonable weather compared with the other parts of the country, but certainly I'm not sure what the other parts of the country are getting at the moment, but what I'm seeing is not really encouraging. But we are in unique times, really. We're into the coronavirus situation, and we're all having to take precautions. I'm confined to a house because of my age, and I know a lot of you are confined to your houses, your homes, because of age or various situations, and of course the government are encouraging us to stay at home. But what I'm really going to talk about today is how, as ham radio operators, we can fill in some of the spare time we're going to find on our hands. Now, this is the time of the year when we start to think about antennas. But I think a lot of you are going to talk about or think about antennas a lot more than perhaps you would otherwise do. And that's because we've got, or you've got, and I've got time on our hands. And we're now getting into the longer days, so it won't get dark now until around about 8 or 8:30, something like that. And as we go further into the year, of course, we'll have even more daylight hours. Now, for HF operators, this is a good time to consider what you need, and probably what you need for the next, 2 months, maybe 3 months. What's the most important thing you need? What are some key things you need? One of the key things you need is so simple. You need to make sure you've got some PL259 plugs, because without a PL259 plug you're not going to be able to connect to your HF transceiver, and it's always handy to have one or two of those knocking about. You also really need a soldering iron if you're putting a PL259 plug on. Another common connector is BNC, and actually BNC, if you're going to use small diameter cable like RG58, BNC is quite a handy connector, and I'll tell you for why. BNC plugs can be very safely and easily attached to the end of the cable if you use the compression type. If you go on the internet, go on the website, go on YouTube, you'll see plenty of videos showing you how to attach a compression BNC plug to a piece of cable. It's so easy, and you don't need a soldering iron. And in fact, if you haven't got a soldering iron, perhaps one option would be to get an adapter, so that you've got a PL259 plug that goes into the back of your radio, and then on the back of it you've got a BNC connector socket. Then you can connect your BNC terminated cable onto that adapter. Easy, no soldering. One thing you will need, of course, is wire. Probably need quite a bit of wire, actually. If you're going to experiment with HF, then get yourself a reel of RG58. The stuff that we sell is good quality. It's not sort of cheap rubbishy stuff. It's got a good braid around it, and I use it all the time. If you're running 100 watts, fine. RG58 will do, particularly for experimenting. For the antenna wire, I've always favoured plastic covered wire, plastic coated wire. Several reasons. The main reason, of course, is that if you have any form of bare copper wire, it corrodes, it looks horrible. It doesn't actually make much difference to the performance. It just looks horrible. And if you want to reuse it, you've got a problem, because it's corroding, you've got to scrape it and clean it. So I personally would steer clear of bare copper wire. Use a plastic coated wire. We've got several different sorts down at our Portsmouth warehouse. So again, get yourself a reel of wire, and that'll help you, because you're always going to use more wire than you think, believe me. And if you're going to use a doublet, you need some balanced lines, so get yourself some 450 ohm ladder line. It's not expensive, very lightweight, and it's one thing that you're not likely to change the length of very often, so get yourself a reel of that, or a length of that, enough to get your antenna back to the radio. Always remember that if you want to shorten a wire element, if you're adjusting it for resonance, you can always fold the end back on itself a little way, and it's almost the same as cutting it off, but it saves cutting the wire off and then suddenly realising that you haven't got enough. Also, don't be frightened of joining wire, because otherwise you'll get through wire at a rapid rate of knots. If you've got several lengths of wire and you're still experimenting, don't be frightened of joining them together. I mean, an aerial is an aerial wire is an aerial wire, whether it's one piece or joined together makes a heap of the difference. Long term it may affect the reliability structurally, but it won't affect it performance wise electrically, so don't be frightened of joining. Let me just show you how I join wires. It's crude, it's frowned upon, but it works and it will last the summer. This is what I do. As I said, it's crude, but it works, and you want to protect it, so you can either put some tape around it, or if worst comes to worst, get some cling film and put it around it. I mean, it's not going to last through a winter, but it will certainly last through the summer when you're experimenting. And once you've got the measurement, you just throw it away and put one single length of wire out. As regard end insulators, the proper insulators look nice and they work well, they do the job. But for 100 watts, it's not that fussy. You can put anything on the end of it, provided it's non-conductive. A short length of wood, a short length of plastic, it will do equally well. So if you're stuck for insulators, you can easily make one up. And same for the centerpiece really, you can fabricate something, provided it's non-conductive, fabricate it and Bob's your uncle, job done. It's not unusual to not go to get the antenna into the garden because the garden's too small. One of the options is to add a loading coil, and just show you here a loading coil that I've used regularly. This is actually made from a B&Q pipe joiner. The good thing about it is it's nice clean edges. The bad thing is you can only get so many turns on it. I've got about 40 turns on here. It does the job, but if you want something with more turns, then obviously you're going to have to buy yourself some piping. But very easy to make. You can see, just drill a couple of holes either end, glue gun along there, and Bob's your uncle, again, you got yourself a loading coil. But do remember, you can use loading coils in series if you want more inductance. Now, an antenna analyzer is very useful, of course, for this sort of work. But if you're working with a resonant, say a resonant dipole, and you've got the lengths roughly right, then you should be able to work with an SWR meter. If you've got a high SWR, then what I suggest is you measure the SWR at the bottom of the band, the SWR at the top of the band. Now at one of those points, the SWR will be lower. If it's lower at the bottom of the band, but still not as low as you want it, let me say the antenna's too long, you've got to shorten it. If the SWR is low at the top of the band, but still not as low as you'd like it to be, it means your antenna's too short, so you've got to lengthen it. So that's a good rule of thumb if you haven't got an antenna analyzer. What you're looking for is a definite dip in the SWR reading. Now, it could be that you only get the SWR down to 2 to 1. That means that you've probably got a matching problem. There's an impedance matching problem there somewhere. It doesn't actually matter for practical purposes. Psychologically, yes, but practically it doesn't matter. So, as I said before, don't get sort of head up on SWR readings. You need something around about 2 to 1 or less. If you want to get it lower, then it's a matching problem, but personally I wouldn't worry too much about it. You need to sort of make yourself a cup of coffee, think about it, and try and figure out what has gone wrong. It could, of course, be that nothing's gone wrong. That's just the nature of the antenna you've put up. Our old friend the G5RV. Well, I've talked about the G5RV in the past, and there's some videos up there. What I would say is that if you have a matching problem on a particular band, one quick fix very often is to simply change the length of the feeder. Make it either shorter or longer. Longer is better because if you make it shorter and you get it wrong, you've got a problem of putting the cable back on again. So try lengthening the cable. The only caveat to that is that in solving a problem on one band, it may produce a problem on the other bands, but try putting about 8 or 10 foot of extra coax cable on it. May well solve the problem. I recently had an email from somebody saying, if I bent my antenna through 90 degrees, would it be less efficient? Well, the first thing I thought of was, why would you bend your antenna through 90 degrees for any other reason than you couldn't fit it into your garden? So I think the answer really is, you probably haven't got much choice anyway, so do it. Does it make it less efficient? Well, I'm not so sure the word is efficient. It probably changes the radiation pattern of the antenna to some extent, but maybe not as much as you think, because generally speaking, if you're bending antennas, you're in a small garden. If you're in a small garden, and we're talking about horizontal antennas, they're generally speaking not that high. My experience is that a horizontal antenna in a small garden tends to be omnidirectional, and no amount of antenna modelling will give you the answer, because there's so many obstructions in a small garden with a low antenna. So I think you can take it from me that the antenna is not really less efficient. It might radiate better in one direction than another, but I doubt that you'll notice that much difference. Another question I had was, what do I think of counterpoises in relation to inverted L antennas? Well, you know, an inverted L antenna has been around for many, many years, been very popular, particularly for stations on 160 metres when I was first licensed. And it was quite common to have a counterpoise. It was thought to be the thing. And in many respects, it's logical that if you have a wire along the ground or near the ground, it's going to be quite an efficient sort of earth system, at least for RF. After all, we have radials for verticals. But having said that, I'm not entirely convinced as to what the improvement would be with an inverted L. I've used counterpoises myself simply because theory would suggest it's the right thing to do. And I suppose it's one of these things where you say, well, try it for yourself. The one the good thing about antennas is that they tend to be reciprocal as regards transmit and receive. Now, I don't know how easy it is for this particular person to do it, but if you have a counterpoise, generally speaking, it's probably quite easy to connect and disconnect it. And I would say, try connecting it, try disconnecting it, and see what the difference in receive strength is, or receive stations reception is like. You may find that it is significantly different. You may just hear a click and not be able to tell the difference. I think the answer is, try it. It certainly would suggest that there is some benefit. Having said that, from my own experience, I've never actually been able to convince myself. Other people will tell you otherwise, I think if you've got room to put a counterpoise in, then by all means do so. Having done that, it would be incredibly interesting to see what the difference is if you connect and disconnect it. So there we are, there's a few pointers. You need to get some wire, you need to get some plugs. You've got time on your hands, that's a great thing for antennas. Go on the internet and type in dipoles, you'll get all sorts of ideas. The main thing is that you need a cable or wire for your antenna element, you need coax cable, balance line if you're going to go down that route, and connectors. The last thing you want to do is to run out of wire, connectors or coax cable. If you've got those elements, then you've got a wide selection of antennas to choose from. As I say, go on the internet, type in dipole for 80 meters or compact dipole, small dipole, and enjoy yourself. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's very short, and as I say, some people will frown on what I've said in terms of the mechanics, but who cares? You know, this is not for 5 years, this antenna. This antenna is an experimental antenna you're going to put up. And probably at the end of the summer, when hopefully the virus is over, you can make it a permanent antenna. But above all, you'll learn something. And that's the great thing about amateur radio. There's always something to learn. So, thank you for watching this video. As I say, I hope it's been informative. Don't forget to click the subscribe button, and I look forward to speaking to you again fairly shortly. In the meantime, enjoy your ham radio, keep safe, bye for now.